There's a Cricket Buzz at Stumps. Adam Collins and Harsha Bhogle. It's a wet and miserable Sydney cricket ground. Play was abandoned early on day 3, a day where India again ran home the ascendancy. They're 386 runs in the lead at the moment. They've taken 6 of Australia's wickets, 5 that came after the lunch break. Australia pretty good before the lunch interval, especially Marcus Harris. We'll come to that, but it was India's spinners who were the story of the day. Kuldeep Yadav, who couldn't get himself into the 11 until his 4th and final test match. He has 3. Jadeja, ever reliable, has 2. They were sensational.
I love the way you said Kuldeep Yadav, who couldn't get into the 11, almost as if you were letting one go like that. The weather is miserable. Of course it is. Where did it come from? It's suddenly cold. But yes, India still got 73 overs in. Australia would be sitting in that change room thinking, how on earth did we lose 6 wickets on that track? If you look at the wickets, Kuldeep Yadav got Tim Payne just playing down the wrong line. He got Cotton bowled of a full toss.
Khawaja with a magnificent wrong and early on. That was the main wicket I wanted to ask you about, actually. Kuldeep Yadav into the side, the confidence to bowl that ball out the back of the hand to Khawaja down the track. The false stroke came. That's what leg spinners dream of. Any wrist spinner dreams of, for that matter.
You know, when Khawaja and Harris started to go after the bowling, I was on air on radio at that time. And I said India's best chance is if they keep playing aggressively. That's how Kuldeep Yadav gets his wickets in white ball cricket. Because if they just block him and start milking him for 1 and 2, he doesn't yet seem to have the guile to break through defenses. But when you're attacking him, he's got a chance. So when Khawaja and Harris were actually attacking, I remember saying that's the best chance. And as it turned out, I'm not saying listen to me, but as it turned out, that's how Khawaja got out. I thought they didn't want him to settle. Much like they did to Jadeja in Melbourne, they didn't want him to settle, so they kept going after him. So they actually ended up playing into his hands, but he bowled well because he just seems to find a way to keep picking up wickets, and he's got 3.
How important was it for him to come into this test match and perform well? We know what happened at Lords, picked probably on the wrong track, didn't really get much of an opportunity. He did need to lay a marker at Sydney, didn't he?
Yes, and he'd been waiting for a long time. I'm quite friendly with him. I kept asking him. He said, I'm going on bowling, I'm keeping bowling because I know when the chance comes I should be ready. But he was also bowling with a white ball because he didn't know whether he'd get a chance. He needed to be ready with the white ball. So he kept on bowling. He's a curiosity, and therefore sometimes he takes the pitch out of the equation, where someone like Jadeja probably needs the pitch a little more than he does. But Australia, as I said, are going to look back and say we lost 6 wickets on this track, whereas the more dangerous aspect of India's bowling was the reverse, and they lost 5 wickets to spin.
Yeah, we heard Ricky Ponting on the commentary on your call, actually, talking about the fact that if Australia are going to complain about the wickets being too flat, we'll go and make some runs then. And at one stage, it looks like young Marcus Harris, who tonight will be inducted to the Australian Cricket Media Association, an inductee as the emerging player of the year, I can announce. That it says a little bit about that we are already considering him a player we can depend on and rely on into the future. With an Ashes series ahead, we heard on some radio commentary today that people think he'll complement David Warner quite nicely. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, we saw 8 Australian batsmen today. And I'm quite happy to say that by some distance, Marcus Harris looked the most composed. He had the best attitude. He was taking on the spinners. He was playing clean shots. And he just looked good for 100. You saw Marcus Harris batting, and in our TV commentary box, they're saying Marcus Harris will never get a better chance to score a Test match 100 than today. So, he had a great chance, but of all the batsmen on view, he looked quite the best. My favourite, of course, is Pat Cummins. I think Australia's second best batsman is at the crease today, but he looked a cut above. I think if you're looking at the future of Australian cricket, you're looking the top 4. You're looking Warner, Harris, Khawaja, Smith.
And you could see how devastated Harris was when getting out to Jadeja not long after the lunch break. Justin Langer put his hand on his shoulder and said, one day, mate, you'll get there one day to 3 figures. Langer had to wait an awfully long time between his debut and raising 3 figures in a test match for the first time. I'm sure it will come in the fullness of time. The other man I wanted to ask you about, Harsha, was Peter Handscomb. He came out in a relatively difficult period after Shaw Marsh was disappointing, edging behind once again. Travis Head spoons back a catch before tea, but Handscomb's still there, and he's coming a lot further forward than what he saw when he was dropped to Perth.
So if you remember when he was getting out, he was so far back into his crease that people thought he was laying himself open to the ball that was much fuller. So Handscomb has made that transition, but look at how Handscomb and Cummins batted towards the end. They batted as if they were on a flat pitch, wasn't it? Which it actually was. You look at the score, 236 for 6, 300 million behind. You might think this track is doing a lot only towards the end, just a little bit when the track started to turn a little bit. But otherwise, this is still a flat track. This is an example of how You keep at it. India's bowlers kept at it. I thought Virat Kohli's field placements were magnificent today, but India just kept at it, and Australia found ways of getting out. So Hanscom showed you can bat on it. Cummins showed you can bat on it. Harris showed you can bat on it. Australia will be the far more disappointed side in this encounter. India will be hoping it clears tomorrow. But look at this at the moment, as we're doing it after the game, it looks as if it's going to rain for 3 years.
And a bit of lightning over the back of the city, I saw over your shoulder then as well. Labuschagne, Marnus Labuschagne, the last of the Australian players who looked really good today. He had the fewest amount of false strokes percentage-wise in any number 3 in the series so far between Australia and India, which includes Pujara. So that gives you a sense of how well he was seeing the ball. But you talked about Kohli's field settings, mixing up the mid-wickets and waiting for an error to come. That was brilliant tactical work from the Indian skipper.
You mentioned the right name. Someone like a Pujara, for example. All these Australian batsmen that you're talking about, they all got in. What they need to learn from watching a Pujara is to say, right, I'm 38 not out here. I'm looking comfortable, I'm playing well. 38 is not even something I'm waving at. 38 is what I'm building up. I get to 50, I get to 100, I get to 150. So that is something I think is the next stage of evolution for Australian batsmen. And for someone who's seen Haydens and Pontings, it seems strange that I should be saying that.
Harsha, I can hear the thunder and I can see the lightning. We better wrap this up. Crick buzzer Stumps. India ahead by a mile, 386 runs. Will they make Australia follow on tomorrow with rain about? I reckon they might. We'll catch you tomorrow.